Today on our Baatein live session, we will be interacting with Domni D'souza. Derek graduated with a bachelor's in creative arts from Srishti, majoring in animation. We're very excited to have him take us through his journey today. From working with Disney to kickstarting and being a member of his own Studio Sideline, a road peppered with invaluable gems.
Hello. Hey.
Hello. So you were talking about how you were a sneakerhead and you finally actually designed your own sneakers. That was really cool. The Naruto
Thanks,
one.
man. Yeah, that was fun. That brand
Yeah.
is really cool. Yeah.
What software did you use for that?
They gave me the design layouts, which I could just
Hmm.
draw on it and then put it. They have a software which they have a 3D model of the shoe, and then you put the designs on it. So I mainly just sketched it out in Photoshop, and then I used their software itself to make a 3D
Okay.
model, and then yeah, they printed that out. It was very cool.
Okay. So to everybody who does not know what we're talking about, check out Eric's Instagram. I think that's the last post he's posted. So what's a film that you watched recently and you would 100% recommend to everybody who's in the session with us today?
Okay, so I watched it a number of times. I can't count how many, and I watched it recently again. So it's definitely Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
And second to that would be one of the Studio Ghibli films, like
Hmm.
something like Kiki's Delivery Service and so on. But Into the
Okay.
Spider-Verse, definitely because of how revolutionary it is and the scope that it opened up for so much more. And it really threw a lot of light, especially to me on the pre-production side, the new things that they were doing. And
Okay.
I even had the opportunity to watch a talk in live by one of the VFX directors at Tahsil in 2019, I think. Yeah, so that was
Wow.
really great. So that really opened my eyes even more,
That's pretty
definitely.
amazing. Okay. So I think all of us in the audience and including me, we want to know where it started. How did it all happen? How did you get exposed to design and why animation of all? I mean, these are a lot of questions, but you can give a
Yeah.
very general answer. What made you pick animation?
So I've always been drawing since I was a child, and thanks to my family and even friends, they'd always tell me that, oh, you're good at drawing, and show my art in case like guests come over my parents to show them art. They'd be like, wow. So that made me feel like, oh, there was something I was good at. And also, my sisters, I have two older sisters, so we used to get movies back. We had a DVD player. We used to rent movies once a week, and they also liked animated movies. And it's also thanks to them that I saw so much Disney content and animated content looking at the old movies. So all three of us, we loved animated films. So growing up like that, I could see a lot. And the things that I liked always felt like drawing them out. So
Okay.
especially during, the golden age of Cartoon Network where we had things like Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, and then Beyblade and all that. So yeah, just
Yeah.
come back and then just draw them all out and make them my own worlds with them. And that was the fun of it. Like drawing, I just loved it so much. And I always then thought like I didn't really know if there would be like a strong career in it until I got to the
Hmm.
later years, like maybe around 10th standard, 11th, 12th, and I started looking into colleges. And that's also how I got into Srishti. So main
Okay.
reason was also because it's in Bangalore. I live in Bangalore. It's not too far from home. So I didn't apply anywhere else. Just went to Srishti and got there. Uh, yeah. Uh, that was it. But my artwork did have quite a journey where uh, I see a lot of people go the same journey where they start making portraits and drawing things from movie scenes and all that and trying to copy it exactly. Like if there's a celebrity, they make a portrait of the celebrity. If they like a scene from a movie, they'll copy it exactly on paper with charcoal or pencil. And that was considered as an artist. Like the artist of the class would be the one who would draw really well in that. But then that was also a point where I ignored all forms of storytelling in art and all of that, which is what college really taught me. When I got into college, I was
Okay.
mainly a portrait artist, and I didn't know a thing about digital art. Like I knew it existed, but I never had a Wacom or anything. So late in my first year, I got my first Wacom, and that's how I started in digital art. And I realized, oh hey, I don't know how to draw backgrounds. I can only draw
Okay.
portraits. So that's also
Yeah.
how I drew every day for hours and hours, and that's how I got to now making only mainly backgrounds, not too
Okay.
much in characters.
you said that you did not delve into digital art until the end of first year. So,
Yes.
just to give a small context for everybody who's listening, I read an article about you that said that you've been drawing up a song from the age of 4. And in
Yeah.
Srishti, in your first year, a professor Narendran who had
Yeah.
given you, okay, so there was this author called Alan P. Lightman, and
Yes.
you had read his book and you felt really drawn to it, and you made an illustration for it, which
Mhm.
Professor Allen really liked it, and he commissioned without remuneration a series of illustrations. Did you do those on like pen and ink, or was that digital? Because I couldn't tell when I looked at it.
Oh, it was pen and ink and scanned. Yeah, it was just ink on paper. I didn't do
Okay,
digital
it
art
looked
at
like
the time.
vector out, so I was
Yeah.
okay. So, for everybody who's listening, again, could you tell us about the scope of concept art? Because you got into narrative art, and
Mhm.
could you tell us about the scope in today's circumstance and where you see it unfolding? Where do you think it's going to go in terms of that?
Uh, okay, so with the more demand for entertainment media, the scope for concept art is only going to increase, whether it's going to be live action in TV series or video games or animated shows, concept art is needed in all these fields. The thing is that I see a lot of people making the mistake, including me, is I didn't know like what exactly concept art was. Because if you go to Google and type concept art, you'll see probably a dudes with a spear looking at a castle in the distance. So when I also first got into digital art, I would make like castles in the distance and I'd put a dude, a small dude, like in scale and be like, oh, the journey or something called concrete skies. And then I'll paint buildings in the sky. So those are illustrations. Those don't have much to do with concept art because that would actually be the final product of concept art, which is like the smallest percentage. So if people are listening or interested in concept art is more to do with design and problem solving. Um, so say there's a concept of a show that's being made, okay, or a video game, and they're like, hey, we want to set this in ancient India. So can you design how the road would be over there? So now you have so much to do, like what were the modes of transport? What were the people wearing? What colors would there be in ancient India in this time period? And you need to put in all those resources and come up with designs and then present that to the director and be like, will this work? Will this not work? And use that. And then the final painting that you make from that is what people usually see and they think, oh, that's concept. But that's just the illustration stage. Like you need to be a good illustrator to be a good concept artist, yes, because you need to be able to convey your ideas out. But it's more to do with design and problem solving always. Even cartoons, Indian animation, they have to go to some town that's in the middle of a jungle. So how will the town look? Why does it look this way? How do we make it seem like it's a bad town or a good town? What
Okay.
colors do we use? So all that, the thinking behind it, the 90% of it, that is the concept art part, and the rest, the last part is just the drawing part. So it's a lot to do with that, and because of that, there's so much scope nowadays. It's just that people don't realize it, and because they only focus on the illustrating part, they don't
Hmm.
have much knowledge into adding a story into it or like how do you make a concept art portfolio. You need to show your design thinking, not just the final image. So people won't hire you if they don't see that, you know. They'll hire you as an illustrator but not as a concept artist. So there's a lot of scope, but you need to have the knowledge on how to get into the field as well. That's the main thing that people miss out on early on.
Well, off the top of your head, if somebody said, Derek, I want to get into concept art and I'm ready to read some books or follow some artists and look at some resources, could you, like, off the top of your head, tell maybe one or two resources for everybody who's listening?
Yes, on YouTube, Fengzhu, FZD School, that's where a lot of us have come from our mentality watching him because he puts up all these classes for free on YouTube. So
Okay.
FZD School, like even I don't know if you know this famous YouTuber named Ethan Becker who's now breaking the art scene. He
Okay.
also studied from watching Fengzhu's videos. Uh, so many different artists like that because he's been putting up for like 10 plus years. So he's a good resource. Another person is definitely Bobby Chu, who runs Schoolism. from Imaginism Studios, and he also runs the Lightbox Expo, which literally has all your favorite Instagram artists and industry artists coming together once a year. So his videos, he interviews all the artists in the world, like the prominent ones, at least most of them, and puts out the hour-long interviews on YouTube. So that really gives you an idea into what people are looking for, how to break into the industry, because knowledge is power in that sense. You can sit and draw all day, but what do you draw? You know, like if you want to get into concept art, you'll get that from watching
Yeah.
those videos. So yeah, like you could have the best drawing skills ever, but if you don't know how to apply them for what the industry wants, then there's no point. So getting knowledge through that way works really well.
Do you have any work to show? Because I know this is actually difficult to show work in this circumstance, but do you have any work or maybe your setup? Maybe you can just look at something. Okay.
I should have actually, like I have my setup in front of me. Let me just switch the camera.
That's brilliant.
So as you can see, just a sec, that's my entire mood board that I have in front of me that I keep referring to for
Oh, that's
inspiration.
amazing.
That's me. Yeah, so I like keeping this. So yeah, I usually keep a mirror so it helps me with drawing hands and reflect and expressions. So that's the main reason. Then I use a normal gaming laptop at this point. But so if I show you guys like what you guys see like on Instagram are like my daily paintings, uh,
Mhm.
which y'all can see a bit over here. But there's a lot more behind the scenes that goes into that. For
Mhm.
example, I do a lot of sketches also on the side, just in black and white to understand values. So these I don't put on so much like on Instagram unless I put them as a collection at one time, because these I do
Okay.
for my own personal practice and skill. Like
Did
again,
Srishti teach
just
you this sort of okay, see, when I was looking at your work, in
mhm.
your initial post on Instagram, you start
Yeah,
off by heavily emphasizing on negative space. Usually I see one
yes,
cohesive form and everything else is
yes,
negative space. But then over time, it becomes two cohesive forms interacting in a negative space. And then it slowly
yes,
becomes these forms start blending into the background. And then, the foreground, background, it just starts blending into each other. And
yes,
out from that, because until then you were putting all of these emphasis on very towards the margins, towards the edges. And then
hmm
suddenly after that transition, it just comes bam in the center. And then you became very comfortable placing these elements in the center. So how did that happen? I was very curious
Uh,
when I was looking at it.
yes. So, in a way, your art evolves by what you see and what you learn from people. Uh, so, in that sense, like, what would be the best way to go from being an illustrator to being a storyteller? Because that's also what animation is huge about, and even illustrations. So, you need to be comfortable with all the spheres and to an extent. Like, even if I'm not so confident in drawing characters, but I want to add a character into my scene to capture the mood or capture the story, how do I do that? So, I put more emphasis then on the background. And I use the background to compose what I'm trying to say. Or sometimes, if there's a character like with animation, I have to draw a lot of characters, especially at Disney. So, what do I do with this? So, in a sense, it was also for me to get more comfortable with drawing more or less of everything, because you
Okay.
never know what your job requires as well. Because being also a concept artist, you need to be able to adapt to different styles based on what the director wants as well, or what the show needs. So, in a way, using a lot of negative space and dramatic lighting used to help me a lot early on. But I couldn't apply that because those are poster images, okay? Those are one single images. But if I were to put them in a sequence, I, they don't work as a story, those are strong frames. I need to be able to tell a story with everything else as well. Uh, so I learned more. I even took up a class on schoolism for a period of time. I was learning from there and learning from different artists such as Zach Retz, uh, Nathan Fawkes,
Okay.
Craig Mullins. So all these big names, they really explain a lot too. Then that also helped me evolve my art style accordingly.
Okay. Can I ask about a repeating motif in your art? Like on a lot of your Instagram posts, and maybe even on Behance and ArtStation, the repeating motif, which you kind of thrashed. I mean, at the start about the floating rocks in the sky. And I've
Hmm.
seen that come across many, many times. So I was wondering, do you have any reasons for being attracted to that, or is it just something that is in my head and I maybe picked up on it?
So for me, like the things I put on Instagram is also like in a way it's like my personal diary, my journal, because right now I'm capturing a moment of my everyday. So I'm drawing things that I'm comfortable with for fun. Because another big thing is to, which I found that's really important, is to divide personal work from your professional work. Because if those lines get blurred, you can burn out and you can start hating
Okay.
your personal work. So what's comfortable for me to draw? I love drawing skies. I love drawing
Yeah.
clouds all the time. So that way it relaxes. I have no pressure because I know how to paint a sky. Then I just have to think about what mood I want to capture, and then I have fun painting the clouds. It's like going back to being a kid again and scribbling on paper. For me, that's painting skies for me. So
Yeah.
that's the main reason. It's just way in my comfort zone, and it's something I really really enjoy doing.
I really, really, really love your use of color, especially in that series which you had, Bombay series, Mumbai series.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
whole series, it was beautiful. I don't know why, but
Oh,
I just
thanks,
look at
man.
it
Yeah.
and it feels like it's a realm not completely real, not completely imaginary. It just feels like a memory. Do you have any
Thank
memories
you.
associated with those drawings, or you do?
So the thing, yeah, there's actually many people take places like Mumbai for granted, in a sense where you don't realize it. Like, for example, I've lived in Bangalore all my life. So when people come new to Bangalore and they be like, wow, this is so great, I don't realize it because I grew up with that. So the thing is, Mumbai has so many of those experiences to offer that say people living there from childhood, they wouldn't really get from an outside person's view until they leave and come back to Mumbai, like you don't value things
Yeah.
until you really lose them, So when I came into Mumbai, like even though I've been living in India all my life, it was still a bit of a culture shock to that extent because the way things were working. So I
Okay.
looked at the different aspects over there, and one thing that hit me most were the monsoons, which I really like to capture as well. So I was trying to capture my view, which is an outside person's view of Mumbai, and the things that I find beautiful about the city. It could be anything, a kid playing cricket in the street. It could be people sitting in auto rickshaw, walking down escalators, just something beautiful that I really didn't see anywhere else. So, and what colors I used to capture them, something that makes it feel a little surreal. But I
Hmm.
didn't also want to make it too experimental, so that's why.
Yeah. So these are more generalized questions. And
Mhm.
if you could, I mean, you probably have done this many, many times, but if you could, after Srishti, after I think you got an internship with Disney and that's why you went to Mumbai. But
Mhm.
if you could, for
Nice.
everybody else, yeah, tell us about your journey after Srishti and going into Disney, working with them. How was that experience? Could you take us through what happened and what challenges you might have faced and what solutions you might have come up with? Because I think you're very creative in that way. Because whenever you want to create a scene, you find a sort of quick workaround. And yeah, in
Yeah.
terms of speed, in terms of the final output, yeah, it's I don't want to call it a hack, but that's essentially what it is. And it was very cool watching you work. So could you tell us about some of
Thank you.
those?
So okay, it was actually very interesting because I joined Disney before I graduated from Srishti. So I
Okay.
went to like Disney as part of my fourth year to do my final semester, which would so I did 6 months at Disney and I didn't attend 6 months at college. It was like that. And the final project which I would do at Disney would serve as my final project for college as well. So the thing is, I was a bit skeptical at first because in my between my third year and fourth year, I had an internship which gave things in a different light as to how the Indian industry is, okay, like on where it is. Because a lot of people who start studios go into the advertisement side. So like we make ads for people, but there's no industry for making your own IP or making your content. So I never wanted to just, make promos and stuff because I knew Disney had a channel, Disney Channel on that. There are a lot of promotional ads that come on it and which are
Yeah.
animated. So I thought I would do something like that. So when I went there, I was really surprised to see that they had an IP department where my job was to sit and make new IP. For those who don't know, IP is
Okay.
like intellectual property. basically, you know how, like, say, SpongeBob is an IP that runs on Nickelodeon, right? Used to run. So that is owned by Nickelodeon. Like Mickey Mouse is owned by Disney. That's Disney's IP. So Disney basically wanted me to create some new show that would belong to Disney that would run on their channels. Um, that is what my job was, and the big task was I was 21 going into a place filled with a lot of old people, and sometimes you're sitting in a room where you're asked to give feedback, and you don't know because people that are like in their 40s and you're half the age,
Yeah.
so how valid is your feedback? You don't know that. But the thing about Disney is that to an extent they actually value feedback from all over. Like they
Okay.
actually give you that much importance. Like you don't feel that hierarchy structure to that extent, you know. Of course, there are different levels, but they listen. You're given a moment to talk and you listen, which is really cool. Um, so another thing is, I'm not fluent with Hindi, and Mumbai is where everyone speaks Hindi. And even shows they are originally created here because of the comfort in India in Hindi, and then they're dubbed in other languages. So that's why I made my film no dialogue. And the other struggles were when I was making, after I got hired back to Disney to work on IP and also be an associate producer, I had to help run a show, okay, that was going
Okay.
on air. So
What was the
sometimes I had
show?
to make episodes. So initially, in the very early stages, I worked on a show called Oi Golu while I was an
Okay.
intern. And when I came back after the internship, I worked on a show called Bagam Bag,
All
uh,
right.
which also went on air. So for the second show, I was asked to help with making episodes. I'd sit one on one with the writer at times because we had to make a large number of episodes in a short period of time. And while my senior would sit with him with different times, we would split the work sometimes. All my episodes are mainly action heavy because I had to get away with no dialogue. So yeah, I would just find ways to get out of that.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and they'd work. Like, you know, you act like you know what you're doing and people believe you. But in Disney, it was very interesting because sometimes you would go to an outside studio. We'd hire studios outside to do animation for us, and then be like, "Oh, who is this kid?" You know, like what does he know? And then sometimes like then they'll see my work, and then it takes time, you know, to build that confidence and faith and trust. So I had to deal with that quite a bit, the age gap, the experience gap, because outside people would always treat you like a kid. But yeah,
Okay.
so
Well, that is both comforting and disheartening at the same time. But
yeah.
so, speaking of disheartening, a lot of our audience members and people have had conversations with, they find it very easy to belittle the Indian animation industry, and they constantly
Mhm.
keep telling me that there is no scope for Indian animators. And obviously, this is not entirely true. So, what does
Mhm.
animation in India look like right now? And um, one of my friends was asking about the streaming versus censorship debate. Could you talk about that?
Okay. All right, sure. So the thing is, why there's no industry in India? Because if you look at Bollywood, somebody comes up with a story that they have of some action or love story or even something that's meaningful. They take it to an actor. The actor is like, "Oh, hey, I'll act in this." Or they take it directly to a producer because there's so much money that already exists that they don't mind putting more money into it because they know it's going to bring them a profit. Now, that
Okay.
is not the case for animation because in India, people don't see animation as a serious medium of storytelling. They look at it as a kids' medium.
Okay.
So, in that sense, there's no industry when it comes to the film side. So, if you have to make an animated film or an anime in India, you have to do it independently. So, that's why we don't have a lot of anime level content coming from India because we don't have the producers for it. Because India, to create the demand for kids, they make a lot of low budget shows and they make a lot of them to keep feeding the kids. Because when you're a child, like when you're 4, 5, 6, you don't care about quality or anything, you just want to laugh. So that's also what they want to
Yeah.
target. So that's where we, as people who are older and smarter, that's where we no, that's why we crave for, I want anime in India, why can't we make something like that? Why do we only have Chota Beam? It's because these companies are worrying about the money and they don't have the time and the budget put in that much to put like 4 years. They rather put 1 or 2 years and get money immediately
Okay.
because animation is not backed by logic over here. Because abroad, animation is fine. Japan is part of their culture,
Yeah.
even US. So that's why we don't have that. But why it is growing is because animation is being perceived as a medium for other things. While we do not have feature films that are booming, I mean, some people are trying, like Web of Studios
Mhm.
and all of that, have their films going on, but that's again independently. It's because while we have these, the music scene is picking up. You're getting animated music videos. We are getting more animated commercials. We are outsourcing animation. People are coming to India and hiring us to work for them.
Okay.
So that's where we, as Indian animators, are getting more and more of a name. And because of globalization, you can sit in your bedroom here in Bangalore and work for someone in US without there being much of a hassle. Uh, so in that way, as artists, as individuals, or a part of a studio, you will get work in India for being an animator. But in the
Okay.
current sense, when it comes to feature film or Indian TV shows to up their grade, it'll still take some time unless there's something revolutionary. What happened in the past was there was Arjun from UTV, which Arnab Chowdhury had directed, which was a big budget production. And it took a few years to make. And that, according to us animators, we love it. But it didn't strike on the same level, of course, as a Bollywood movie, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that is why things like that degraded. Chota Beam puts out a movie every 1 or 2 years, I think, and it's only kids watch it. So adults are just going to the movie to watch it just for their kids. So that's a
Hmm.
very small margin and it brings back no money. They're more passion projects as opposed to money making things. And the world runs
Okay.
on money. So that's why in India it'll take some time.
All right. So one of my friends wanted to know, or even I was
Mhm.
curious, what role has social media played in the development of your style, or even clients taking an active interest in your vision and your style and where you're going? Like you said that Instagram is sort of a personal diary, but has it actually
Mhm.
brought you jobs and commissions? That's what I wanted to know.
Yes, actually, I'd say a large part of my income over the past few years is through Instagram, through
Okay.
clients I met via Instagram. So the thing is, the number of followers doesn't matter to an extent because when I had 1,000 followers, I was getting good projects, and now I'm also getting good projects. But back then, that's the thing. Like social media, it's a good resource, but it's also quite a bane at times, because for example, it pressurizes people too much because when we were
Hmm.
14, 15, we were at home watching cartoons and going out to play in the evening. But now people, when they're 14, 15, feel like they're so pressured that they're not doing things on the side apart from schoolwork and not making an income, not making it big on social media. So that's also falls onto us artists because there's no way to categorize. Are like People don't understand that, hey, I'm say 24 and I've been drawing for years. They want to get to my skill level really fast and they're 14,
Yeah.
15. Give it time, take all the time you need, enjoy the process. So if you
Okay.
can avoid that pressure and take inspiration from Instagram, it's great. So that's dealing with social media. That's a problem all of us can relate to. It takes all of our time during the day. And when we put up something and we don't get likes, it gets us down. So trying to get away from that is one side. The other side is using social media. Uh, Now, people don't know what they want unless they see it. Like you don't know you want a
Hmm.
KFC Zinger burger unless you see the poster of it, right? So
Okay.
you have to use that mentality to get work on Instagram. Now, if you're doing things that people have already seen that they want, they've already probably hired, they're going to hire that person to do it. So instead of copying other people, unless there's a crazy demand for that, you make things that people are going to want.
Okay.
That's why when people make a lot of their personal work and they put it out thinking that people are going to hire them, they are not, okay? Because that's your personal work. You like it, doesn't mean other people are going to like it. Now, what's an example of making something that people could want? You could collaborate with one of your friends who's a musician. make an animated loop or make an album cover for him. You get free music, he gets free art. People will see, oh, hey, that your art can be used as album covers. I want that.
Okay,
Or
yeah.
they'd be like, oh, hey, his music can go so well with art. I want that. So you have to create that demand. Like, you don't need followers to do that.
Mm.
You just need people to be interested in it, to like create the demand for it. Number of followers don't matter. It doesn't matter as much.
So I was asking, so it's not just about anticipating the market, but it's already being an active part of the market itself. Is, is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah, like a lot of us, we make the mistake, me included early on, is I wait for opportunity. It's
Hmm.
that I'd be like, I'll pull up some good artwork and I think that people are going to come to me and message me. But that's not me being active. That's me just being an artist. That's not me marketing myself. So now if I use that time I make for art and I put it for making something that'll get me an income, like album covers or sample book illustrations or things like that, then it brings in the income because I have to create
Okay.
the opportunity. Yeah, because the issue is don't wait for people to message you or mail you. It usually doesn't work
Okay.
out.
So I did have some, I think, lighter questions
Mhm.
about your routine because when you say I'm making a warm-up drawing and you do it still, but even though it's a warm-up, you do it extremely productively. So how do I at least personally make my warm-ups more productive? Because I think you're doing that and
Yeah. So again, I've reached to a point where I know to an extent what I'm looking for. Like my line of work is say in the concept art. I'm more towards background art and I work heavily with creating keyframes, visual development. So when I'm doing warm-ups, I'm not going to draw a girl character because I'm not so good at that. That, according to me, would not be a warm-up, it would be more like a study. It's something that I need to learn to draw. So when I'm doing warm-ups, it's something that I take off the pressure of myself, and it's also um, more physically get my hands warmed up, get my mind working, and to make it productive, it's to an extent where you don't explore too many new things, but because say you're very good at painting a forest, but you want to paint a city. I would not do that in a warm-up. I would instead paint a forest and add a small cottage in the forest. That's
okay.
going a little more out of the comfort zone. So just adding a little more exploration to it. So I am learning from it and I'm also making it a piece that I can take further in the future.
All right.
So that's kind
Yeah.
of what I look at when I'm doing warm-ups. And sometimes I do warm-ups that are gonna be in tune with what my work is for the day. So if I'm going to be storyboarding for the full day, my warm-ups are going to be some black and white thumbnails
Okay.
that are going to help me get into the flow, get into the mood. Like I wouldn't then paint a crazy, highly detailed background scene because I don't need that. So it's more mentally to get into the flow. To make it productive is just honestly just drawing every day for hours. So then you know to an extent what to put together to make it look visually good. But
Yeah.
mentally, it's in a way staying in your comfort zone.
Okay. So you already did answer my question about working in Mumbai versus Bangalore, but is there anything else that you want to add on to that?
So I'd pick, honestly, as of today, I'd pick Bangalore, especially post
Okay.
this pandemic time, because it is my home. I love the weather here. I have
Yeah.
a much bigger space to live in over here. Mumbai houses are just ridiculous, and the rent is crazy. So there's a lot of issues. Then also my family is here. So my parents, I like spending time with them. Um, Apart from that, yeah, Bangalore also because of friends. Like this is where Studio Sideline is. This is where I'd like to be.
So I also did have a question about the retention of ideas because I think you play a lot of sports and then you're into cycling. And I feel like personally when I do that during the cool down period when I'm just sitting alone or going alone at it in that solitude, I get a lot of ideas. And
Mhm.
I've spoken to some artists and I feel like that's a very natural thing and a lot of people share that sentiment. How do you retain them is what I wanted to ask.
Um, so in a way, if I get an idea that I like, I I
Hmm.
in I realize that it's more helpful to try and build that up in your head to see if you can take it a little further. Like, for example, I get the idea that I really like my morning cycle. Like, I went for a ride. I'm just saying, I really like the idea. So when I'm thinking about it, I'm in a way trying to build up what the mood is in my head, how I'm going to convey it, what composition I'm going to make, and then I have it already built in my head. So then whenever I
Okay.
get the time, I can sit down and paint it out. So also when I come up with these ideas, like when I'm thinking alone, like for me, showers are where I get the my most thinking happening over there.
Yeah.
So like I really love shower time. So that way I form these ideas, but then I also eliminate ideas away. I'll be like, oh,
Hmm.
that's too much effort. I can't draw that. Or no, that'll be a good idea for an animation maybe next year or something like that. So I lose out on a lot of ideas like that because
Hmm.
all of us work like that. But when I like an idea, I don't just like the idea. I build it up to a point where I can make it happen in my head.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
really helps me. So that's also what helps me making my daily paintings every day. It's like I could have an idea like from yesterday that I made, and then I could implement it today because I've built it up over the day.
Okay. I wanted to ask about influences. Who do you look up to? Who would you like to really collaborate with? In let's say I will ask for a few fantastical names. If you want to collaborate with somebody, but you know it might not happen, and in a more realistic sense, somebody that you really want to collaborate with, maybe this year or next year, within a 3 year kind of period. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, yes. So my main influences as of right now, they change over time, are the people who currently work in the industry as viz dev concept artists for these revolutionary movies. Like, for example, Klaus, Into the Spider-Verse, those people, because they're very active in the industry right now, and they're not old legends, like say Glen Keane and so on. That's like too
Yeah.
legendary for me to ever think of. So that's why, so like people like Zach Retz works on Raya and the Last Dragon, Into the Spider-Verse. He worked on Scooby-Doo movie, all those things. Patrick
Okay.
O'Keefe, art director of Into the Spider-Verse. These guys sometimes, and it wouldn't more or less be collaborating with them. I just like to
Hmm.
meet them and see them work, because I feel like if I collaborate with them, I'll lower down the work, I'll lower down the quality. So I would like to learn from them. So
Okay.
that,
Yeah.
that that's why I don't know about collaboration yet. Collaboration, I'm really happy right now working with my close friends. But these
Hmm.
people, I look up to them. So I would like to just learn. Like, give me your skill. Just I want to take it all. Uh, that's what.
So I would think that's going to be the last question about, yeah, I mean, this is one of these quick questions. Have you ever considered working with Type? And you were an associate producer for the show called Oigolu. So if that was on air right now, do you have some sort of a font that you would try to use for Oigolu in English subtitles?
Uh,
If the show was in Hindi
okay.
and it had English
So
subtitles.
yeah. So me with font, that's like another on two ends because I am not very good with graphic design. I have tried. I've worked on like I worked with TEDx designing posters. I worked with Swiki on some of their graphics. And when it comes to text, I don't know. I just feel like whatever looks good. Like I don't even know the font names per se to that extent. Uh, so in that way, it wouldn't be the best thing to ask me again for subtitles for Oikolu because I think I made a music video once and I used a font for it and then it didn't look so good later on when I exported it. Uh, so
Okay,
yeah, I
fine. You
think
can,
that's one of my.
you don't have to tell me the name of the font, but you can tell me the mood you wanted to convey, maybe in 2 or 3 words. What kind of a mood would Oigolu need as a font?
Okay, yeah, also with Oigolo, I did work on it initially, but I'd have to give credits to one of my colleagues, Adya, for being more of the associate producer on that. But I would say something loud, something very
Okay.
loud, loud and happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we go into the audience questions. I think everybody will have questions
Mhm.
about Studio Sideline. And after I
Mhm.
ask this, we could elaborate on that. How did it happen? Who is Sailesh Gopal? And I think he was a senior. But I did want to
Okay,
ask
okay.
you, you
Mhm.
said that making, I'm just going to quote you right, making thumbnails is fun, drawing hair is fun, but yet you call yourself lazy. So how does that work? Because I couldn't put two and two together.
So I, in a way, I'm lazy because I try and find the laziest, easiest ways to get things done. Uh,
Hmm.
like uh, I always use a lot of shortcuts. I think if you even see my reels, they're just full of shortcuts on how to paint backgrounds very easily to that extent. So, like if I'm sitting at my table and then my water bottle's like at my bed, I feel like,
Yeah.
I'm too lazy to get it now. I'll get it like afterwards. So in that sense, I'm like, no, that's too much effort. But then I'd come back and I'd draw a full sky. So that's how it works. Like I'm so lazy. It'd be like to fill my water bottles, I have to go downstairs and be like, no, I'm not doing it now. I'll just be thirsty. So in that way, I am lazy even with household chores and stuff. And in my art, I get really impatient because
Hmm.
I really like finishing things fast. So sometimes when I'm on a project, I have to sit and paint things out like in detail, uh, like leaves, grass blades, and all. Because oh yeah, just give the illusion that there's grass. I won't actually paint each blade.
Yeah.
I'll just scratch some brushstrokes and it'll look like grass. But so when I'm working on high projects, I have to sit and paint grass. That's when it really tests my patience because it takes hours. So I just like the things fast. Yeah, in that sense, I'm very lazy. According to what my work profile suggests I do, I'm very lazy for that.
Okay. So
Yeah,
Studio Sideline, and then we'll go right into the question and answer with the audience.
got it.
What is
So
Studio
Studio
Sideline?
Sideline, so you always have this project that you want to do on the side. Like suppose you're studying for your exams back in school, you always feel like, oh, I'm waiting to be done with my exam so I can do that, whether it's playing a sport and all of that. When we were like in animation school, we always wanted to, have some personal film that we wanted to make or some illustration that we want to make. So we keep pushing things to the side. So that's why finally, because Preetham, Vibhav, Sailesh, and I, we all wanted to work together at some point, but I was in Mumbai. Preetham and Vibhav were like in working their own jobs at the time. Sailesh is in Bangalore, and so Sailesh is my batchmate. Pritham and Vibhav are my
Okay.
juniors, but we're all the same age. So in that sense, we finally got this time when I left Mumbai to come back to Bangalore, and we were like, oh hey, all the things that we put on the side, we can now take that and what all we put on the sideline and make it the main line, and that's how Sailesh also came up with the name Sideline, because
Okay.
all the things, yeah, yeah. So yeah, Sailesh gets credit for the naming. And that's how we formed. So now we decided, oh, hey, we don't want to start off with client work or anything. We just want to make something, a passion project that's fun. So we've been working on a film right now that we've been made. It's, I guess, 80-90% done. It should be out. We're not
Okay.
putting a date on it yet. It's in the final stages. But that'll also be like sort of our reel in a sense. And it's just us collectively working, the four of us together, and seeing how cool it is to work on a passion project where you have people who are like equally or even more talented than you to work with. So it's really amazing. It's fun.
All
So
right.
after we launch this project, we have other projects underway. So it's going to be a running thing.
So Art underscore was asks, was it difficult to shift from hand drawing to digital illustrations?
Initially it was because I had to get used to looking at the screen using the Wacom. But over time, you develop your skills to a point where you draw the same on a screen and on paper. So it just takes a lot of practice. Like, don't give up very early. It took me a few weeks to get the good hang of drawing on a Wacom. So yeah, initially it was very hard, that eye-hand coordination.
So Akash Draws asks, are NFTs the future of digital art?
By the way it's going, it might be, but it could either like I don't know how to predict it. It could either crash, and also the toll that it's taking on the environment will also serve as a factor to making it crash. But also, it's getting really overloaded right now. It's like everyone wants to try it. So I really don't know. It's very interesting to see because the pace at which it's going is just ridiculous. Like every day, it's just doubling. Like the people using it. Like half of the people I follow on Instagram are now going on NFTs and so on. So I can't predict it. It's just something I can't. But I do see it as in one way or future, but I do think it'll crash also.
Okay. The Neha Inc. asks, is there a big difference in the portfolio skills we need for concept art for animation versus games?
So you need to look at what the studio you're going for requires, because if it's indie game or if it's a high budget game, they have certain parameters as to what they need their characters to look like or how well the assets are managed. Whereas animation, it could also, like the skill set won't be that different for concept art in general, but you'll just have the knowledge will be different because when you're designing a game character, it's very different from designing a character for TV. Because again, gaming it could be a very different role to play and so on. So you basically it's the knowledge, but you could go from animation to game as a concept artist easily if you have the skills.
Okay. So I think a lot of your questions, I mean, I don't mean to be rude to all the audience members, but a lot of your questions, Derek actually answers on his Instagram, his Behance, and even with the portfolio, he does talk about, he compares Marvel and DC, and like all of these questions are answered. And I don't know how or why he keeps all of this up, but yeah, he has a lot of helpful tips and materials. He just posts them very regularly. And yeah, why do you do that? I mean, okay, it's a rhetorical question.
Oh no, it's because when I was in college now, I didn't have any guidance as such, you know. Uh, why not, you know, if I could post things on YouTube or
Yeah.
Instagram, like Q&A, because I didn't know, like there was no path, you know, like engineering doctors would be like, oh, I have to do this, then this, then this, and then I get there. But for us, we had no idea because in India, the ones who are the legends aren't on social media, like they're barely there. And so it's
Mhm.
basically our generation who's like the first to take a step in this, you know, like animation, concept art, and so on. It's like our generation is the first. Before that, they're all off social media, they're off the grid. So you don't know what exactly is needed, like in the Indian industry, on the Indian scene. So in that way, if I can be of help, it's cool.
So Pratya Kashyap asks that, are you considering further studies abroad? If so, where and why?
No, I'm not considering further studies abroad. At this point, no. I'd rather honestly take online courses like schoolism. And if I were to go to college, it would mainly be for the people to interact with people like around my age and with my interests, not to sit in classes as such, because at this point, I can get that online. So I'm not
Okay.
interested in further studies.
So Sukuna Geto asks, is background art also important when you want to go into character art and animation? I think you did a series
Uh,
with Silage about
yeah,
the BGFT thing, and does this have something to do with that?
yeah.
Okay.
Uh, So it isn't really that important because again, Silesh is great at characters and animation, and he has no interest in background. Like he has skills in it. He's a good artist, but he doesn't like drawing backgrounds as much as I do. So you don't need to be good at it. But if you feel like a background adds to your character, if it's an illustration, then adding a simple background, yes, but it's not a rudimentary skill that you will need. So yeah.
Well, ZenXHII asks, any advice for people trying to become independent artists, especially in a country like India?
I would suggest if you can get an internship at a studio or so on initially, because then uh, it'll give you a view on how the industry is, which will then also help you decide, do I want to go independent, do I want to stay? It's like as opposed to just going directly independent and directly becoming a freelancer, it's best to have a view from either side. what it is to work with people in a studio and what it is to be independent. Then after that 2-month internship, if you do one, it'll be very helpful to then help you decide, because you'll also make contacts, because making contacts from scratch is a bit hard, uh, unless you make it big on social media and so on. But again, in a country like India, it's all about creating demand. And you also need not just focus your audience on being in India. Because you have social media, you can also work for places abroad. So India is not a limiting factor, but it's just making yourself stand out. So I would suggest initially collaborating with other artists. If you're starting off with artists like yourself, and building up your people who see your work to that extent, just building up the demand for your work. So it's like collaboration is very helpful, and creating a demand by seeing what the industry would need from you.
Trespassers will ask, what is your opinion on experimental animation and how much would you like to dabble in it in the future?
Okay, so experimental animation is something I actually admire and I look at. It's something that I'm not very good at in that sense, because experimental animation deals more to do with your feelings, your instincts, your senses, deals with emotions and all at a direct level, as opposed to a normal narrative that's storytelling in that sense. So it's something that I look at because, according to me, experimental animation is like the modern art of the animation world. It's very cool. It's not something that I would personally dabble in because I have so much interest in the mainstream industry. But it's something that I do sometimes look at for inspiration, and just at how people's minds work. Some of them are just so creative. I don't recall any at this point, but it's wow. Like we studied in college and all. It's just incredible. I have much respect for it, but it's not in my comfort zone.
So a lot of people are asking about college. I think you addressed something similar in the start when you said people just want to jump to where you're at, or like they're asking for the quickest way to get where you are at. And yeah, bringing college into it, many people are asking how important is college in design or animation to pursue this, and if somebody did not go into this field, then how would they, yeah, how do they make a mark? You said collaboration, but is there any other way?
So it depends. Collaboration would helpful if you're trying to go freelancing and independent. But again, in college, what's important is that you are with so many people of a similar interest, and you have peers, you have friends. That's where you make a lot of connections. Like for example, it's only because of college that I now work with my friends at Studio Sideline. That wouldn't have happened if I was just independent. Uh, so college to that extent, also there's no real shortcuts like to get to where people like Silesh and all is. You have to draw a lot to get there. Like for us, you can't just get there by using shortcuts or any sense, because they don't exist. Like college is not gonna give you that sure way to get into the industry, but it is going to give you a very good platform, because the more you learn from people around you, that's why building a work environment is very, very helpful. Um, like when you go to college, it's like being surrounded by worlds of different people, like everyone comes with their own backgrounds, and us as artists, we express who we are. So you get to see so many different worlds in that extent, and that's who you interact with, that's who you grow with, that's where you learn. And those friends always in a way will also help you create opportunities to live from your art. So again, it is like collaborating, but you can always, again, once you're in a college makes sure that you have a portfolio ready by the end of it. At least a decent college would. That you can immediately send out by mail to studios and people, and get work saying, hey, I'm available for work. So that's also there, because college still gives you those 3 to 4 years just to focus on your art and nothing else.
Well, I guess before we conclude, Pranav asks,
Yeah.
and this is from all of us, how do you handle creative fatigue, burnout? I think this is the last
Good
question, and
question.
after this, we'll have to end the session. I'm so sorry
Yeah.
to everybody who asked. And if you want references on resources, what kind of brushes he used, all of it is on his Patreon. Like, I think you guys really, really need to check his page out and all of his links because it has so much information.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so with creative fatigue, it's I try and make smaller achievements in other things of life, because if I keep trying to force out ideas and creativity by just watching movies, because that's usually what gives me creativity, right? Watching movies, watching films, looking at other artwork, I just keep putting more and more pressure on myself, like give me ideas, give me ideas. I'm not getting anything. So take a break from art, but don't take a break from life in general. Maybe try cooking something small, and if it turns out well, that's a small achievement. Maybe try, for me, working out, or go for long walks, go for a small trip, like for a day, come back. Make small achievements, like learn a dance move, things like that, because it also keeps your mind from stagnating. Because once you take a break from art, us as artists, we tend to take a break from everything. But sorry, if we keep our minds going forward by progressing, we won't be taking a break. And again, we have to remember that whatever we do in our day contributes to us as artists. So and being an artist is not just sitting at your desk and drawing, it's everything else you experience in life. So keep the other things you experience going on. Maybe start a new video game, kill a boss in that video game, you feel a sense of achievement. uh, like talk to a new friend, make a new friend online, have an interesting conversation. Those things will refresh you and keep you still going as an artist, because that's who you are as a human being. And then once you come back to your work, you'll have new refreshment. Honestly, that really helps me a lot when I burn out. I burned out a lot, and that just helps me.
Okay, so we have run out of
Yeah.
time. Thank you, Derek. This was a wonderful and very wholesome session and very helpful for most of us, I'm sure. It was amazing having you. I'm Tushar Hasur, and I've been your host for
Thank you
today.
so
Thank you.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.